DEI is not dead. Listen, companies are dropping their diversity initiatives left and right, but here is the truth. Your customers are not dead, and they are becoming more and more diverse than ever. So, have you ever seen a brand's marketing and you felt like, oh my gosh, they got me? Or on the flip side, have you seen some that made you cringe, like, oh my gosh, how did that make it out of the idea room? And who looked at this? Listen, stick around because today we're going to be talking about um, why inclusive marketing is still your biggest business strategy and how to do it the right way. And I want to hear from you. What are some ads that made you feel seen or that made you cringe and just go, no, 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 no? So today we're going to be breaking down some of the biggest DEI wins and fails in brand marketing, and some companies who have made both the best and the worst list. And then I'm going to share with you some simple, practical ways that you can make your marketing more inclusive, whether you are just getting started or whether you have an $8 million Super Bowl ad budget, which can you believe that's how much Super Bowl's ads are this year for 30 seconds? So stick around, we're going to jump in. Forget what you heard, friends. DEI still matters when it comes to your marketing. Over 40% of the US population is non-white, and that number is growing according to the 2023 census. And Google did a study that found that 64% of people who watched an ad that was diverse and inclusive took action shortly after watching it. So and that number jumps to over 85% when you're talking about Latino, Black, and LGBTQ audiences. So if you are serving anyone in those groups, this matters for your business. And brands that embrace inclusive marketing don't just look good. They're not just checking the box of doing the right thing. This is actually a way to drive higher engagement, customer loyalty, and sales. So I was thinking about when I was getting ready to do this video, like what are some of the ways that I could help um, you to see examples of how this works and why it's important? Because there's some examples I'm going to give you today. You probably remember these ads. I know I do. The first one, I want to talk about some that did not get it right. And the first one that always comes to my mind is H&M. Back in 2018, they had an ad that was um, called The Coolest Monkey in the Jungle. How many of you remember that ad? And it had a little black boy who was wearing a shirt that said Coolest Monkey in the Jungle. And Black people were in an uproar because um, the historical context around comparing Black people to animals, especially to monkeys, is very offensive. And so this is just an example of when you don't have people that in look different and have different cultural experiences in the room when you're making decisions about your marketing, you're going to miss the mark and you're going to probably say something or do something that's insensitive or offensive to a group of your audience. Okay, another example. I love high-end fashion. I love mixing high-low, and Gucci is one of the brands that unfortunately made it on our fails list. So back in 2019, they released two products that missed the mark significantly. They had a black-faced turtleneck. So it was a black turtleneck, kind of like this, that went over the lips, and it had red lips right there at the top, the part that would hit your lips. And it was very offensive, again, to people of color who had experienced blackface because it was very reminiscent of that blackface look. And then that same year, they also released a Sikh-inspired turban as a fashion accessory. So for those people who are from that culture, it was very offensive because you're basically reducing a religious garment to just a fashion accessory. And so those are the kind of mistakes that where you want to, if you're going to be inspired by different parts of culture, consult people who are in that culture before you put out products or your marketing, because otherwise, again, you're going to offend somebody. All right, the last example I want to give of a fail is Dove. Now, I have to say, I was surprised to see Dove on the list of fails. Like when I was doing some research about different ads, I did not remember this one, but it was an ad that was called Transformation. And they did it on Facebook. That's probably why I missed it, because it wasn't, not that I watch a ton of commercials unless it's Super Bowl, but I didn't see this Facebook ad that was done back in 2017. And it was a Facebook ad of a black woman who, when she removed her shirt, it revealed a white woman underneath. And that was perceived by many as implying that black skin was dirty or needed to be cleansed. And this comes from historical context. Again, you got to know your history, right? And not just your own history. You got to learn the history of other people that you might be serving too. So there's a historical um, context for soap companies who implied that you had to scrub the black away. And that, and just in the beauty industry in general, whiteness has often been depicted as being pure or better than. And so this ad really hit that nerve for people and reminded them of some of those old ads. Look up Pears soap, Pears soap, and fairy soap ads. Those were some from the 1800s and early 1900s that showed these types of imagery, because we have to know our history, right? So context and historical awareness matters. Okay, so we've talked about the misses. Let's talk about some wins. And speaking of winning, a company that does inclusive ads well, that are often about winning despite differences, despite barriers, is Nike. And they had an ad back in 2020 called "You Can't Stop Us," and I remember this ad. It was depicting diverse athletes, including Paralympians and hijab wearing women who were winning, right? And so it was just showing that regardless of our differences, you can still win. Like you can still be an athlete and win. And then one of my favorite ads, it might have been my favorite ad from this year with the Super Bowl. I don't know about you guys, but for me, Super Bowl, like I kind of watch for the game, but I'm a brand nerd. So I'm watching for the commercials more than anything else. And it drives my husband crazy because we're watching the game. He's wanting me to fast forward to past the commercials. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, we got to watch this. I'm doing research. But there was a Nike ad this year in the 2025 Super Bowl that was called "You Can't Win, So Win." And it was showing these diverse women athletes who are at the top of their game. And it was talking about all of the stereotypes about women athletes. Like, you can't fill a stadium, so fill a stadium. You can't do this, so just do it. Like, you're going to do, like Nike, just do it, right? And I thought it was so great because it had these women like Caitlin Clark and Sha'Carri and Jordan Jordan Childs, who are these women who are at the top of their game, but they are fighting against these stereotypes against women athletes. So like me watching it, I don't consider myself an athlete, but I was watching it and I felt like ready to go and lace up and go like run something. So these are the kind of types of, this is a great example of how by having more inclusive ads, more inclusive marketing, empowers your audience, because you're probably serving people that have different backgrounds, different experiences. And so when people can see themselves in your marketing, then they're going to resonate with you. Like, I'm not a big Nike shoe wearer, but like I wanted to go put on my Nikes after watching this commercial. I guess I fall into that, what is it, the 64% of people who take action after seeing an ad that feels inclusive. That was me. Okay, let's talk about another Super Bowl ad. This one is back from 2019, and it was from Microsoft. I actually remember this ad, like it stood out to me that much, from 2019. But it was with their adaptive controller. And in the ad, they had children with disabilities who were using the Microsoft controller, and they were in wheelchairs. Some of them couldn't speak. And it was showing how this controller helped people even who might have been it might not have been accessible for them to play games with their friends before, can now do it with this adaptive controller from Microsoft. And I thought this was a great example, not just of inclusive marketing, but also inclusivity in product development. So, regardless of what your business is, if you are a service based business or a product based business, think about accessibility for of your product. If you are a coach or a consultant, when you are, maybe you create courses, think about how people are going to consume your course or how they're going to participate in your coaching sessions. Are you only addressing people who are sight able or who are hearing abled? Are you providing different ways that they can engage with you? Are you, when you're creating your course materials, are you using images that depict a diverse group of people that you serve? So think about those things when you are creating your products and services as well, because DEI matters there as well. And since we're talking about product development, I could not have this conversation without talking about Barbie. So, a few years ago, Barbie was everywhere with the new movie that came out. And what I loved about the movie was they also showed how Barbie has embraced diversity in their dolls. Um, you had, of course, Weird Barbie, who was my favorite. But you also had, there were Barbies that were in wheelchairs. There were Barbies of different body shapes and sizes. Um, and that's something that Barbie as a company has really embraced since 2015, when they started introducing dolls with different body types, skin tones, disabilities. Even there's a Barbie with vitiligo. So representation matters even in your product design just as much as representation in your marketing. Now, I told you that there was a brand that we were going to talk about who made both the best and the worst list, and that is Dove. So, like I said, I was surprised that Dove was on the fails list because they have done such a great job. Over the last 20 plus years, they've had the Real Beauty campaign, which is all about embracing women of different sizes, backgrounds, skin tones, and how we're all beautiful. And this ad, they had an ad in 2025 at the Super Bowl as well that made my top 3 ads list. And that was one that was showing a 3-year-old girl running, and she just kept going and going and going. And halfway through the ad, it pops up on the screen that by the time girls hit the age of 14, they've stopped sports because of critiques about their body image. And so that was one I think most women could relate to, because around that age, most of us have experienced some type of body image issues. So I love that even though they've had, I would say, good intentions, but maybe not executed well in the past, they have recovered and they've learned from their mistakes. And so that you can do that as well. We're not always going to get it right, but if you are committed to making sure that your audience feels seen, and that they feel like you get them, if you do make a mistake, you can still recover from it. It's not the end of the world. Just take your learnings from that experience, bring in other voices that are different than yours to inform your decisions about your branding and marketing, and then execute again. And even before you put something out, ask people that are different than you and have different perspectives than you to take a look at it. If you're not sure, ask. All right, let's talk about some practical and simple ways that you can incorporate inclusivity and diversity into your own marketing. One of the easiest ways that you can do that is through your imagery. So when you are looking for stock images, or even when you are having your own brand photo shoots, think about how you can create images or use images that show a diverse group of people that you serve. So think about things like not defaulting to a single race or gender or body type or age. Now, if you know that you serve a specific group of people, like for me, for instance, most of my clients are women. Most of them are 40 and up. maybe mid 30s and up, and I'm working with those that are entrepreneurs and executives. And so even within that group, I work with women of different backgrounds, different races, um, different body shapes and sizes and skin tones, and some that are moms, some that are not, some that are LGBTQ. And so when I'm thinking about my marketing, I want to make sure that I'm depicting images of the range of people that I serve, so that um, people can see themselves in the work that I do. And so I want you to think about that for yourself too. A great opportunity for you to make sure that you always have um, inclusive images is the next time that you plan a brand photo shoot, invite people who represent the differences and the types of clients that you serve to be a part of the brand photo shoot. Show you working with them, show them in groups, show them in different situations where you might be working with them, or where they can see themselves. I have a client who, when we were launching her brand, she was all about empowering women with their health and confidence. And so when she did her initial brand photo shoot, she invited a bunch of her friends that were women of different sizes, different skin tones and backgrounds and ethnicities to be a part of her photo shoot. And so now she has images that she can use forever, that whenever she's looking to depict women that might be like her ideal clients, she can use real pictures that she knows are inclusive. Some great sources for this. I love Canva. Canva has such an array of stock images. If you don't have your own brand images, you can, I have used it to find images of people with disabilities or in wheelchairs for my marketing before, women of different ages, men as well. So Canva is a great free resource, or if you use the pro version, which I think is something like $10 or $12 a month, highly worth it. It gives you a lot more features that you can use, like removing backgrounds and things like that, to make it just a little bit more adaptive for whatever type of marketing you're using it for. There's also tools like Unsplash and Pexel and Pixabay that have diverse images that you can use as well for free. Next, let's talk about using inclusive language in your social media, your emails, and your website. One thing to avoid is gendered language. So instead of saying he or she, use they, because you don't know who's reading it on the other end. You don't know if you're talking to a woman, a man, a transgender person. You don't know. So use words like they instead of pronouns that are gender specific. That includes terms that, like, I came up in sales, and so most of the things back in the 90s when when I started, um, said things like salesman, right, versus salesperson, chairman versus chairperson. So there are people of all genders who are in different roles, and so we want to be respectful of that too, so that nobody feels like you're not speaking to them. Other terms that you might want to consider, instead of saying minority, say things like underrepresented groups, or people of color, or diverse communities. Um, Minority has a negative connotation to it, like people are less than. So that's something else to consider. A common one that I see is sometimes people using lowercase capitalization for groups. So whether you're saying like the black woman or the white woman and using a lowercase b or w, you want to use uppercase because it is a formal, a proper noun. Just like you would say Hispanic, or that would be in capital H. So you want to be consistent across all of that as well. Some other inclusive language tips, when you're talking about disabled people, do not use normal versus disabled, because that implies that disabled people are not normal. So you can say non-disabled versus disabled to imply, so that you're not implying that one is the standard versus the other. Other things to consider when you're thinking about language in your marketing are using cultural idioms or sayings that may not necessarily translate universally. Some examples of that might be common things that we say, like dropped a bomb or dropped a bombshell or a smoking gun or take no prisoners. Those are terms that we use a lot in American culture. But if you have an audience that includes people who come from a background of war, um, immigrants, or people who just come from cultures that have experienced war, that can be triggering for them. So if you are using an idiom or a saying, make sure that you think about those things. And if you do choose to use them, then explain it or give an example afterwards, because some of those phrases that we use, like let the cat out of the bag, other countries don't use that, or people from other cultures don't use that. And so they're looking at you like, what are you talking about? So if you do use those, make sure that you follow it up with an explanation or an example so that people get it and they don't feel left out of the conversation. So we saw from some of the examples that made the worst list that if they had had diverse voices in the room when they were making some of these decisions, they may have stopped a campaign before it went live and caused damage, right, to the brand and their reputation. So think about, who do you have on your team? Do you have a diverse group of voices, perspectives, and backgrounds on your team influencing your marketing? So whether you have employees that help with your marketing, or if you use subcontractors, make sure that your voice is not the only voice that you're listening to, so that you have other influences and you can make sure that you're not insensitive in your marketing and your messaging. That can even include running campaigns or running something by a friend or a client that is different from you, just to say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? You don't want your voice to be the first, middle, and last and only voice when you are thinking about your messaging. Okay, another thing that you can think about when you are creating your content and your marketing is making sure that your content is accessible. So I know for me, I don't always watch videos with the sound on. Think about people who are in your audience who are deaf or who are hard of hearing. So you might want to consider using closed captions or using transcripts so that people who are watching your videos can still participate in the content that you're creating. Think about when you're putting images on your website or in your social media posts. Instagram and your WordPress and all of those website tools allow you, when you are uploading an image, to include alt text. Alt text is where you're basically just describing what the image is. So for people who are blind, they can still get what the picture is or what the image is that you're trying to portray. Also, for people who are colorblind, this is something a lot of people don't think about, is think about other ways that you can create contrast on your website besides just color. So it might be that you bold certain phrases or words, or that you change up the fonts so that you're not just relying on specific colors that may not be readable to people who are colorblind. One of the areas that I think is a missed opportunity by so many businesses is to consider inclusivity in your testimonials. Now, testimonials are a big piece of the types of content that you should be putting out. I talk about the 5 C's of value content, and credibility content is one of those. In case you're not familiar with the 5 C's, go back and watch the video that I just did on the 5 C's of value content. And it walks you through all 5 that you should have in your constant rotation to make sure that you're building trust, connection, and building your brand. So credibility content is one where you want to include social proof, and testimonials and case studies are a great way to do that. Think about, do I have a diverse arsenal of testimonials and case studies? So that doesn't necessarily have to mean people who are of different races or different genders, but that can be a way to allow people to see the different types of people that you work with, and for them to see themselves. But also think about different experiences, different job roles, Think about people who are at different stages in their journey that you can showcase, because that also creates inclusivity and shows a diverse range of people that you work with, different ages, different problems. So those are all things you want to think about, because you may have one case study that speaks to a certain group of people. Maybe you do a case study where, like I know I've done one where I was speaking to a younger client. And so that one actually resonated with a lot of people who were her peers, who were in that age range. She was late 20s, early 30s. And so that testimonial, that case study, um, when it was she shared it out and I shared it out, and I got more people who looked like her reaching out to me. And then I did another case study with a client who was in her 40s, and she was a mom, and she talked about balancing her kids and work, and that was that attracted a whole different group of people to my business. So you want to just think about that. It doesn't just have to be race. It doesn't just have to be gender or age. It can be different life experiences as well, so that someone is going to see themselves and feel included in the conversation. The last tip I want to share with you is create your own brand style guide. If you are not sure what should be included in it, Canva, again, has templates for brand style guides. I've done them for clients before. It's not just about having your logo and your color and typography on there. This is also where you want to talk about language that you use as a brand. And if you're not sure what to include there, check out the AP Style Guide and the Conscious Style Guide. They've got great examples of things that you can consider, some of which I've shared with you here today, in your own brand style guide, so that not only you know and are aware of things that you want to keep in mind when you're creating your marketing and your content, but when you start bringing on team members, everybody's playing by the same playbook. See, there's an idiom I just did that may not resonate with everyone. Everyone is following the same guidelines. See how I did that? Now that you understand why DEI is critical to your marketing and your content, I want to invite you to join the waitlist for my upcoming brand messaging bootcamp, where we are going to be talking about how to create your own content that attracts your ideal clients. And it positions you as an authority and a trusted advisor. So go ahead, there's a link in the description where you can join us for the next boot camp. I would also encourage you to grab my free masterclass that is the 6 biggest mistakes keeping your brand invisible and how to fix them. So we've talked about some mistakes that have been made by some big brands here today, but there's a lot of common ones that I see with especially smaller businesses and people who are trying to build their personal brand that I want you to avoid. So make sure that you click on the link below for that, so that you can grab that free resource, and feel free to share it with somebody else who could benefit from that as well. All right, that is it for today. I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I really want to hear from you. What are some campaigns or some ads that you've seen that made you feel seen and like they got you? And let me know about the ones that were some fails too in your eyes, that made you cringe. Until next time, I will see you, and make sure that you are including your audience in all of your conversations when it comes to your marketing.